Joe, the South's biggest rivalry, the Iron Bowl, is this weekend in the rivalry week. Alabama versus Auburn. Auburn coming off a fantastic win versus A&M, in quadruple overtime. Alabama coming off a pretty bad loss to Oklahoma. Your thoughts on this game? And let me start off by saying this before we get rolling here. I got to be real with you. If I'm Alabama, I'm pretty pissed off as a fan right now. Both of their touchdowns getting called back. I'm not sure number one, it was a bad call by ref. But number two, I don't know if you had enough evidence to overturn the Ryan Williams thing. But you still got beat by Oklahoma, who's been a really bad team. And now you go into the Iron Bowl potentially being 9-3.
Yeah, Blake, I think, first of all, this game has to be one of the most chaotic to predict this weekend. The line is right now set at about, I think it's 11.5 on Bet Online. I don't know if I would even touch this because Alabama's in this position, like you just mentioned, that they're pretty pissed off. They're pissed off at Kalen DeBoer. They're pissed off at the outcome and the fact that Alabama's likely getting pushed out of the playoff conversation. We're going to find out when the playoff rankings are released. Because of that, Kalen DeBoer, you would think, is going to be extremely motivated to win and win with an exclamation point. He is going to want to step into this matchup against a team that is extremely mistake-prone, turnover-prone, all of those things. But Alabama just showed their own messes last week. They showed their worst offensive performance of the year. Jalen Milroe played his worst game maybe in his entire career, and he had some bad games last year with the turnovers we saw in the picks that he threw against Auburn. This game, because of the rivalry that it is, Blake, I think that Auburn can do whatever they could to keep this thing close. But part of me feels weird saying that because Alabama has just so much talent that they should be able to win this thing handedly if they play to their capability.
Well, they haven't been playing up to their capability.
Right.
So that's the problem. I'm going to push back on you. I don't think Auburn's a bad football team. Now, they got to win this game to become bowl eligible, okay? You said one thing there, though, that has plagued them all year that didn't plague them against A&M. When they're not turnover prone, they can hang around with anybody. Mm-hmm. It's just the nature of the beast. Joe, either Bama can't or doesn't want to run the football effectively. I don't know if they're going to be able to consistently run the ball on Auburn because Auburn all year, Joe, they're 20th in the country in run defense. They're only giving up 110 rushing yards per game. They went out and got 2 interior defensive tackles that have played well. They're good enough at edge. They're good enough at linebacker, and safety play has been fine for them in the run game. And that has been where Bama has struggled. Let's just be real. Either they don't want to or they're – I paraphrase it like this. I'm going to paraphrase it again like this too. I feel like that they're trying to make Jalen Milroe fit into Kalen DeBoer's system. That's what I feel. And especially in the running game. It's not working. It's not. So we're getting to a place with Alabama where I look at this team and I say, all right, you can make fun of Auburn for being 5-6 right now. That's good on you. Okay? I'm not going to. And this is the South's probably biggest rivalry. This is not a team in Auburn, and I get where this game's being played. This is not one that you can look past, and you wouldn't because of a rivalry. But, man, they hung around with you last year, and you were a playoff team. And now you have flaws. And let's call it what it is, massive flaws. Joe, I saw a team last week in Auburn, I get at home, line up and run against a better defensive line in A&M. The only problem that I have with Auburn is that they're mistake-prone. They're turnover prone. And if they're not doing that, like what happened last week, you're right. I'm staying away from this game betting-wise because I think it's going to be closer than people think it's going to be.
Oh, Blake, what I was just going to bring up is that I feel like this Auburn team has had so much inconsistencies on offense. Like they had an unbelievable performance this past game, but they have had a lot of shitty outputs in their last 5 games against Vanderbilt, against Kentucky, and against Missouri. So if that version that we get against Texas A&M, where they're going to be super locked in, they're going to be super focused, and they're going to put every ounce of their fiber of their being into this game, that's what it's going to take for them to play close. And my biggest thing that I keep coming back to with Auburn, they had to play mistake-free on offense in order to get to overtime to beat Texas A&M. Are we going to bank on the fact that they're going to be able to be mistake-free and turnover-free in this game against Alabama, which has been able to produce turnovers, which has been able to produce sacks against some of their opponents?
So here's where I am at the current moment, okay? I'm with you offensively on Auburn. Defensively, I think that they've been pretty stellar based off of the situations that they've been put in. Joe, they're a top 25 team defensively in total defense. Again, I talked about them running the football. We talk about Auburn being inconsistent offensively. Now, I know that Alabama's issues have been inconsistency on the road offensively, but you're still being inconsistent. I mean, like, look, man, again, I every time I watch Bama offensively outside the Georgia game or second half, since the second half of Georgia, this is how I feel that I watch Bama. Unless it's LSU and Jalen Milroe can just run all over the place. Square peg, round hole. I mean, like, you're getting to a place where, Joe, what if there's a crucial down and distance? Okay? And I'm relying on Bama offensively to make a play. How do I know that you're going to get lined up right? Now, last week's not their fault, but this isn't a first-time thing, right? Like, this isn't a thing where I look at Bama and say, hey, man, this is all on Kalen DeBoer, that he's the one making mistakes, that, like, all of this stuff, okay? But I look at, okay, this team. I look at these situations, and I say to myself, I just don't think that there's a massive separation. And when I look at both of them, now the massive separation will come when Auburn starts turning the ball over and Peyton Thorne can't get things going. If he plays like he did a week ago and he can be consistent like he was a week ago, Joe, this is going to be a dogfight for Bama. It's going to be an outright dogfight. I don't care what anybody tells me. It's going to be a dogfight. Now, here's another thing, too. I think Auburn offensively has been more simple in what they do offensively. What did they do last week? Run, inside zone, outside zone, play action, deep shot. Inside zone, outside zone, play action, deep shot. They did it literally. There was a sequence on PFF that I saw. They called the same order in sequence. Inside zone, outside zone, play action, shot. 19 of the 21 calls in a row were in the sequence. So I look at that and say to myself, they have simplified things. And I do see a team in Auburn that can have some momentum. Joe, they're a fourth down away from knocking them off a year ago. And so, look, this game being at home, though, I've said a lot about this. I'm going to go with the home team because of where it's being played. But here's the truth. I don't trust either one of them. When it comes down to it, I don't trust either one of them. Whoever is the more disciplined football team is going to win this football game.
That was the next thing that I wanted to bring up, is that besides the South Carolina game where they were coming off of the Vandy loss and they played super messy at home, Alabama's best performances have come in Bryant-Denny. They have come when they have had the ability to play at home this year. And that's where Kalen DeBoer's volatility has been. Is the LSU game was phenomenal for them on the road, but they have not played their best football when they've been traveling. That is something that Kalen DeBoer, and is going to be a criticism of his until he shows a consistency to do so, that he can step into these difficult, really tense road environments and play better football. But they're just completely unloading on their opponents when they've been at home. I do lean Alabama for what you just talked about there. I think that there certainly is potential with this being final game of the regular season, Alabama likely being out of the SEC championship mix, that DeBoer wants to finish the season on a strong note and take all of his frustrations out on Hugh Freeze. If they have any bit of momentum early in this game, I think that they're explosive enough offensively And all it takes is one or two of those picks from Peyton Thorne that we've seen this year for Alabama to run away with it. But like, again, I keep coming back to, I would not bet this game. This is one of those games that is always drunk. This is one of those games where it never makes any freaking sense. So I would not touch that 11 and a half point line.
Let me say this. What was my biggest take about Alabama coming into the season? Remember, I got absolutely abused by Bama fans. Do you remember what it was?
Well, it was for a lot of things. It was the recruiting. It was the...
No, and all I said about recruiting is can we wait and see what he does before we judge that he can. That's all I said.
Yeah. Yes.
What was my biggest take on why they wouldn't succeed?
Was it the road performances?
Defense travels. I did not like their defensive line. I didn't like how they performed in the front seven. We talked about it all offseason. Joe, they're 62nd in the country in run defense. And let me tell you this right now. Are we going to line up and run that thing at you now? All right. Get ready. Because, listen, man, one thing that I got to give you, y'all think this is a game. I'm not playing with you. Brother, they have been able to line up and run the ball on teams. So you want to look at me and tell me that they don't have the capacity to run the ball on you? Think about this. Oklahoma couldn't throw the ball. And you knew what they were going to do. So there's another factor in here, Joe, that I say to myself, you better be careful here.
That's the last bit with this for me is Jackson Arnold is a good runner, but he's not the most elite athletic quarterback in the SEC. He's more down the middle. The way that he was able to run past Alabama's defensive line and have the production that he had and set up all of the running backs for Oklahoma to have the big performances that they did, all of that would concern me if I'm an Alabama fan coming into this game, because Peyton Thorne's a better runner than Jackson Arnold is. And when he's used effectively as a runner, he can get and generate production, and that's only going to set up Jarquez Hunter to have a big game. So I think that ultimately, as this is my final point on this game, it all comes down to if Alabama wins this game and covers and wins it handedly, and you leave the stadium saying, we kicked the crap out of a rival, it will come down to how much rushing production does Auburn have in the first half? Does Peyton Thorne have over 60 yards, 50 yards? Does Jarquez Hunter, is he on track for over 100 yards? If the two of them get going early, that will really, really keep this thing close and place Auburn in a position. I mean, the same thing happened last year, and I know it's a completely different circumstance because, different coach, completely different roster, but they're going to try and lean on Hunter and Peyton Thorne as runners. And Hugh Freeze needs to be smart enough to say, we need to take the ball out of passing situations to avoid turnovers and just copy and paste the game plan that Oklahoma had against Alabama last week.
Jackson Arnold can move.
He can move, but he's just not like that's not his best trait.
He's more of an athlete than Peyton Thorne. Come on now.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Peyton Thorne can't line up 25 times and run it right at Bama and beat somebody. It ain't gonna happen.
All right, fair.
All right.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.